Polar Night. Hey everybody, welcome to this week's Let's Try. Another free visual novel like usual. Is that a... So I'm trying to figure out if that's a tear streak or if it's shading at the edge of the muzzle. Yeah, the moment I see horror in snow, my brain goes straight to the thing inevitably. Looks like they found like a streak on the wall. There's a flashing light here and there, which shows an axe sometimes. Ooh, the rim lighting is fun. But I'm just a sucker for rim lighting. Strong art presentation right out the gate. It's just the Polar Night part that's like the unfiltered text just kind of planked on there is a little more awkward. Badoop. That's the struggle with using any of default Ren'Py stuff. The wolf couldn't see anything through the blizzard. Beyond the windshield was just a thick flurry of white. But then, he didn't have a destination in mind anyway, just away from here. I like to not have maximum text speed. There we go. He had one hand pressed tightly to his abdomen, trying to compress the wound there. The other gripped the steering wheel tightly. A mix of adrenaline and extreme cold disguised the pain. He was surprised he even managed to get the snow truck running and driving away from that madness. His eyes glanced at the glove compartment. Maybe he could just throw it out into the snow? Drive away from this? Seriously? After all that, you're going to fuck everyone over to save your own skin? The wolf ignored him, his companion sitting in the passenger seat. Engaging was pointless. His ears pinned back and fangs bared, partly from anger, but mostly from the pain in his belly. And yet, shame bubbled within him. How could he think of breaking his promise? I'm not surprised, to be fair. It's all you ever do. Again, the wolf didn't respond. A flash of agony shot through him, reminding him of his grave wound. He grimaced and cried out, but his cry was followed by an awful sputtering sound. The sputtering continued until the engine fell silent, the vibration of the truck ceasing. The wolf sat there, staring at the dashboard, a mix of bewilderment and accusation, as if he could shame the machine into starting up again. He glanced at the fuel gauge, empty. How? How could he have overlooked it? His departure had been hurried, to say the least. They'd not had the luxury of properly preparing. After an awkward pause, the wolf threw a frustrated tantrum, cursing and slamming his fist against the wheel, kicking the footwell and screaming. This isn't helping, you know. The wolf only barely resisted a furious snarl at the other figure, reining in his anger in order to slump forward, head against the wheel and eyes closed. Tears rolled down his muzzle. The journey had lasted maybe 10 minutes at most. He couldn't have traveled more than a couple kilometers. All of that effort and sacrifice just to fail within walking distance. There's a first aid kit in the back. You look like you need it. The voice snapped him out of his misery. His eyes flicked open, now aware of just how tired he was. How the steering wheel of this utilitarian truck might as well have been the fluffiest pillow ever. As his awareness flowed back, the stench of iron in the cabin made him gag. He knew the source. He brought his trembling hand up to his face. Though the redness was hard to make out against the black fabric of his glove, the soaked glistening told him it was saturated with his blood. Everything felt distant, like he was drunk. Speaking of feeling distant, we got the third-person introduction. I wonder if this is our protagonist, or if this is the cold open of somebody dying before the story starts. There's definitely a tragedy there. If we're going by the thing, then it's potentially like how in, I think, every version of the thing, or at least the two most recent versions of the thing, usually you have somebody that is the last survivor from the previous snowy settlement that is the only person to make it out. And they die before they can convey anything, but it like sets the stakes essentially. What I'm curious too about is that like it's None of the stories have to be first person, but a lot of the visual novels tend to be first person present tense and not second or third. So we have the wolf as it's being externalized as a different character to some extent based on the genre conventions. But even further externalized, we have this voice. Just some voice keeps talking, and it's hard. It's not entirely clear. It like wakes them up when they're passing out and stuff, so it implies that it exists in some way and isn't just their internal monologue. But also, it sounds like it's not a person that's near them, like anyone that's in the room. Maybe it's on a. Maybe there's some kind of like symbiotic or alien presence, like a ghost or like a symbiote, like from Venom or something like that. Or it's just like a radio that the person has on them. Someone that's mad at them for running or something. I don't know yet. And God, did he know what drunkenness felt like. He reached in the glove box, his trembling hand brushing that cursed thing to grasp the flare he'd been given. Regardless of anything else, he needed to warn them, to tell them he'd failed. Maybe they'd come for him. The wolf reached his trembling, blood-soaked hand to the door, and after a brief pause, opened it. He stumbled out into the cabin, not bothering to close it after him. Something told him there was no paint. No point. I don't know why. I was like, paint? That doesn't make any sense. Hang on a minute. Bracing himself against the side, he staggered through the knee-high snow, still keeping pressure on his wound, though now it was more of a token act. He couldn't see more than a foot or so in any direction. Instead, he placed a hand against the truck's side, using it to guide him to the back. Upon reaching the rear doors, he had to pause for a moment. The howl of the blizzard saturated his mind, drowning out his thoughts. He brought the flare up, preparing to activate it. And then, just like that, his weak, trembling hands let it slip from his grasp. The buffeting wind and snow instantly carried it out of his field of vision. Fuck, no! He dropped it to his knees, glancing around frantically as he dug at the snow for the flare. Without it, the others would have no way of knowing he needed to be guided back. He clawed desperately at the thick snow, feeling his inability to move wane as the cold cut through his jacket and trousers and sucked the warmth from his already weakened body. Gazing at the snow, illuminated by the rear headlights of the truck, he slowed and stopped, breathing heavily as his blood-soaked hands carved red swaths in the snow. He stared at the crimson streaks, realizing he was never going to find the flare. No! He threw back his head and let out a primal, feral, lupine howl of rage and despair into the unceasing blizzard. He stared into the inky blackness only slightly penetrated by the tail lights. They didn't stretch more than a few meters into the blizzard. He could probably try to return the way he came, but he couldn't have made the journey back, even if he wanted to. He turned, half crawling back towards the rear doors of the truck, and the only shelter around. The cold barely registered anymore. He felt like his legs were moving on automatic. He pawed clumsily for the door handles. He missed them several times, his vision feeling oddly blurred. Was it the cold? The snow buffeting his face? Finally, his hands reached the handles and gripped them, yanking them open. The cargo compartment was almost entirely empty. They had not had time to stock it. He turned to gaze back where he'd come from. He scanned for the glowing crimson of the return flare, but there was nothing. They'd agreed to wait for 2 hours before popping flares to guide him back. Far too long. Far too late. With Herculean effort, he hauled himself up out of the snow, dragging his body inside the cargo compartment. He turned, reaching for the doors once again and pulling them shut. Just like that, the blizzard dropped from an ear-shattering howl to a dull roar. As the wolf regained his bearings, the pain in his belly made him cry out, bringing tears to his eyes. He scanned the interior, looking for first aid kit, and saw it on the sidewall. His stomach lurched as he felt the wetness of his own blood soaking his entire abdomen. He reached a trembling hand for it, his fingers brushing the surface of the plastic container. But then his legs faltered and he stumbled, his hands grasping for purchase, The kit tore off the wall, and he toppled forward onto the crates on the floor. The impact knocked any remaining breath out of him and left him paralyzed. His pained cry came out as a strangled gargle. The kit crashed to the floor, spilling its contents everywhere. He lay on his belly, one hand stretched out desperately for the roll of bandages, but he no longer had the strength to move. No. God, please. I don't want to die. Mom, Images of Mom came flooding into his mind, filling him with a yearning and an ache more intense than any wound. He'd have given anything just to see her, to hug her, to tell her... Connor? I need to hear you say the words. The figure spoke up behind him. He couldn't see him, but he could hear the bitterness, the mocking tone. I need to hear you say it, Connor. What you should have said to me and Mom before you abandoned us. Connor finally sagged. His limbs were numb and his vision was fading. Connor. Say it. His vision went dark, closing in. What little strength he had left abandoned him as he receded, his consciousness a flickering light in the encroaching dark. I'm so sorry. Garret. That's a way to start your story. I'm always in here rattling my cage in the confines of my first hour little Let's Tries where I'm like, need stronger intro on almost every game. Where it's just like it takes so long to get to any kind of thing. And a classic shortcut that horror stories have is the classic cold open on somebody dying. It does do something. It sets some kind of stakes and gives you some kind of perspective. And the confusion and uncertainty and the element of interpretation demanded in those scenes makes it commonplace to make them brief and underexplained because they're meant to build intrigue. And so moments like that are like sometimes because people really know how to handle them and sometimes it's people just following patterns, but knowing to do a cold open often is very handy just because it lets you do this kind of thing of hooking people very quickly before you have to spend 3 hours explaining the setting and so on. So that person had a horrible time. They were wounded somehow. They took off but didn't have the gas. It's ambiguous to the extent to which people knew he was leaving or not. That was the part that I was a little unsure of, is that there was the part where they agreed that they'd light flares in 2 hours to guide him back. But then there was also the part where the voice is like, oh, you're abandoning everyone? And I'm like, is he abandoning everyone? Because it kind of sounds like he was on some kind of mission to go somewhere. Whereas abandoning implies that he's actually expecting to escape this entire scenario this way. But the gas completely fucked him. And it's, yeah, I don't know if they... I don't know if the wound happened before or during the trip. If it was before, you think they would have sent somebody else, but maybe things went really, really poorly and he escaped while people were dying or something. Maybe even there was a plan for there to be different people involved. So even when he's thinking about the flares coming in 2 hours, I wonder whether or not anyone would be left in 2 hours to light them, let alone the fact that he's not going to live that long. Clutching the 3 packs of cigarettes, I amble over to the counter while the bored-looking bull cashier watched me. Der alt du vil? I gave him a blank look. I don't speak Norwegian. I couldn't even guess which language it was at the first glance. He rolled his eyes, likely dealing with non-speakers on a frequent basis. Will that be all? He enunciated clearly like I was deaf. Stifling the urge to tell him to stick his attitude, I give him a nod. He told me the cost. My ear twitched. Much cheaper than Britain. I was tempted to grab another couple packs. And also maybe to fuck with him a bit. But I also decided against it. I didn't want to take the piss. Speaking of things that are extremely British to say. Or to have him kick me out, smokeless. I pulled a wad of Norwegian kroner out of my pocket, rifling through them before separating out a few crisp notes and placing them before the cashier. Cheers, pal. Ah. Garret, right. So we are the person that was abandoned? So we're gonna find out that our brother died? Is that the relation? I don't know. I gave him a brief smile and nod, but he didn't return it, simply handed me my change. I slipped them into my pocket before turning awkwardly, my large backpack making it hard to maneuver through the slightly cramped store. I turned carefully to avoid sweeping the tightly packed shelves and marched to the door. I pulled my open pack of smokes from my pocket, fumbling for my lighter in the outer pocket. Hello. So we are a wolf. Very distinct, different appearance, yeah. I was going from the start screen, was like the promo image I have to go in on when I go into this. I kind of thought the protagonist was a possum, but this is more definitely a wolf. Looks like the other side of the head from what we see on the other. I'm actually curious. Are they the same character? No, probably not. No. That might be a possum. Pink nose, white face, black fur. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not crazy. I was like, I swear they look like a possum, and I don't know how I'd ever think this was a possum. There are several things I would like to learn how to draw going on here. But I'm still trying to get past how fucked up hands are as a concept. They drive me crazy. My prized possession. Even before I started smoking, this was the only thing I have of my granddad. An Ellison Sports Elite. Using my lips, I pull a smoke from the pack, stuffing it back in my pocket as I bring out my lighter, shielding it using my other hand from the frigid wind. Immediately it caught. The tip of my smoke started to glow and I inhaled. The welcome, calming rush of nicotine flooded into me. After a full breath, I flicked the lighter closed, tilted my head back, and after a moment, exhaled. The smoke mixed with the sub-zero wind and turned into a billowing cloud, hot breath and fumes mixing with frigid air. So I guess this is the figure that was looming in the previous scene, was Garret here? That's as I spoke to them in first person. They said, "I'm sorry, Garret." So is this guy's voice was who was pushing us through all the delirium, but was not present and also was not a real consciousness, unless they're gonna pull some echo shit. I assume it's just like the looming guilt was the voice. At this time of year, it looks so close to the words like long year by yen, which all break down as like a compound word in a way I'm ready for. Like a German word, but made of English words, but that could all be a coincidence. Longyearbyen could be pretty much summarized as dark and cold. As my boots crunched the snow, I realized that for all we Scots liked to whinge about our weather, this place was truly something else. And yet I had to admit, sullen cashier notwithstanding, I liked it. I liked the cold, the snow, the quiet. Only a couple thousand people lived here, and yet it didn't come across as a ghost town. Just peaceful. Not like Glasgow. I was fond of my hometown, but it could also be a madhouse at all times of the day. It was the only place I knew that had a McDonald's that needed bouncers because of the nutters that came out at night. I shoved my hands in my pockets and kept the smoke set between my lips, drawing on it occasionally. The meeting spot was just up the road, maybe a 10-minute walk. For all the thick, warm gear, I was still feeling the chill. Longyearbyen, I'm just gonna have to accept that I don't know how to pronounce this though. The largest settlement in Svalbard. a Norwegian archipelago near the Arctic. The northernmost settlement on Earth. Ah, this is a name I should probably know then, just because of its novelty of that. That's like, it's one of the extremes. I figured that was what was going on based on just the intro too, but this means that we're in a setting where, I guess that's why it's called polar night, yeah. Our expectation of a day-night cycle being a reasonable thing every day goes away once you get north enough, and some of the northernmost areas that people live in, nighttime lasts for months, which is one of those beautiful, insane concepts where it feels like a sci-fi concept or like a genre fiction thing, but it's just real and people live in it. It's just actually there. People just don't have sunrises for entire seasons of their life in some places, and vice versa. And that is wild. If I remember correctly, the opposite also happens, where there's a period of time where the sun doesn't go down, essentially. I believe it's in part due to the fact that the Earth is tilted on its axis. So when we think about the way the sun works, it glowing on the Earth in a specific direction, and then the Earth spinning, and that affects which side is night, which side is dark. You'd be like, why would that happen then when you go further north or south? Like, maybe they get out of whack, but going completely away for a while, and it's like, oh, it's because at a certain angle, because the axis is consistent with which side of the sun it's on. The Earth isn't like wobbling. I mean, it probably is also wobbling, but it's not wobbling on that axis. It spins on that axis pretty cleanly. So because it's tilted like that, when you get near the poles, it's like there's a side that'll just never face the sun for ages, even though it's spinning, because it's too close to the tip, because there's an entire area that's being overtaken by the tilt of the Earth. And within that circle, none of that will ever face the sun for a while. Let's see. On the other side of the road, walking further into town, were a pair of men who had rifles slung about their shoulders. A pretty crazy feature of Svalbard is that the residents are required to have firearms if they leave the settlement into the wilderness for protection from polar bears. Although they can't carry loaded firearms within the settlement itself, it was still odd to me to see guns being carried in the open. They glanced over at me, and I averted my gaze. I heard mumbling followed by a harsh laugh. I probably looked like a tourist or something. I tugged my dark fringe down a little. Fortunately, my left eye was on the opposite side of them. By the time I arrived outside the cafe, my smoke was almost finished. I glanced inside the window, trying to see if anyone was there. It was deserted, apart from a solitary figure, a possum guy sitting at a table with a cup in front of him. He seemed to be absorbed in a book. That's probably the possum, then. Smoking and even vaping and so on, they're probably, like, way more, like, persistent and popular in colder areas like this, where, like, the warming effect would probably be an entire extra bonus on top of everything else. I have never smoked. No idea if he was a local or not, but given this is where we were supposed to meet, I figured it was a good bet that he was here for the same reason I was. I guess it was good I was just the one guy. I guess it was good it was just the one guy. If I'd stumbled upon a whole group, I might have lost my nerve at so many new faces. With a final draw for my smoke, I stubbed it out in a bin, and then pushed the door open. The coziness of the place hit me immediately, like I had just slipped into a warm bath. Despite the late hour, the place still looked open. Chairs were neatly set against clean tables. A single staff member was behind the counter, bustling away. Apart from the generic background music these places tended to play, having music come in and then having called generic by the game is very funny. It was totally quiet. The possum didn't react to my entrance, even though the guy behind the counter gave me a smile and a nod. He must have been really into that book. I made my way to his table. When I arrived, my shadow passed over him. There it is, yeah. I'm not crazy. Hey. He jumped, glancing up at me. He must have been really engrossed, but when his eyes met mine, instead of smiling, he looked like I had pulled a gun on him. Hi. I swallowed hard. I was used to odd looks and awkward first impressions on account of my eye, but I wasn't used to people looking like I was brandishing a butcher knife. Are you here for the Sylvia? He gave me a wide-eyed stare of fright for a moment before relaxing. Oh, yeah. Sorry, you just surprised me is all. He gestured to a seat opposite him at the table, and I gratefully slipped my pack off, set it to the floor by the chair, and sat down. Where'd you travel from? Okay, so we came here to find our brother, probably, or whatever family member or other person. Brother seems intuitive. He closed his book and slipped it below the table into a pack sitting by him. Scotland? Still not shaken off the journey. 20 goddamn hours. Ha! Vancouver, 30 hours. He gave me a cheeky grin. I just was there a few months ago, my first trip to Canada. I'm Stephen Golyabev. Pleased to meet you. He extended a hand and I shook it with a warm smile. Garret Reid, likewise. Want a coffee? It's really good here. Easily one of the best I've had. Sure. I know it's furry goofiness, and it's all they're all cartoon characters anyway. Just like the idea of giving furries facial hair and whatnot. You're like, how do they have facial hair? They're covered in fur. I don't understand. It's like, because they're a cartoon character. Fuck you. But I can't unsee the fact that this possum doesn't have anything on his tail. Like, he's dressed this snugly for the cold, but there's nothing on his tail. And his tail's just flesh. Like, there's no fur for the tail either. Like, some of these characters, I'm like if our main character's a wolf, it's like, okay, he might be okay with at least some amount of cold. A possum, I don't know about that. And a tail that's just unshielded, I'm like, he probably needs to have an embarrassing, like, snow condom on his tail. Like, just some kind of weird sleeve. Sure. He turned around and waved at the barista. Same again, please. The barista gave a thumbs up and started preparing a coffee. He turned back to me with an excited grin. It's honestly amazing. None of that Robusta crap. I gave him what I hoped was an interested look. I knew fuck all about coffee. I'm more of a tea person, to be honest, but I figured it'd be easier to just go with it. Yeah, which is a pity. Longyearbyen is pretty dull and cold. I thought my tail was going to freeze off. Uh-huh. If only there was like a way to address that topic. I don't know. I like the cold. I wish I had more time to sightsee. Each their own. He gazed at me with those big excited eyes. I admit he did have a somewhat infectious smile, although he didn't speak, instead watching me expectantly. I remembered the book he'd been reading when I entered, the one that he'd been engrossed in. So, what were you reading? Oh, this? He reached beside him and pulled the book out, which, now that I could see it properly, was a very battered paperback. It's Distant Origins by Rupert Gadala. Ever heard of it? I shook my head, glad he was up for filling the silence. It's about how the Mosaic period was the work of extraterrestrials. So you know how during the Mosaic period a bunch of different species all gained sentience all around the same time? Well, it didn't even give me time to answer, so my jaw just hung slightly open while I tried to maintain eye contact and nod. I guess he's enthusiastic. Gadala thinks it could only be because of outside influence. Think about it. How else would so many different species all start to gain sapience around the same time? So he thinks some star-faring race visited and uplifted a bunch of different... Very enthusiastic. Wait, did he just say star-faring? And Gadala thinks these visitors left behind clues that the governments have hidden and kept locked away. Oh no. He thinks some of them are still out there, still waiting to be found. He theorizes that deep in the jungles of South America... Christ on a bike. He really wasn't going to stop. Of course he got called a crank, but academics agree with him. They just get suppressed and ridiculed if they try to tell the truth. Oh no. And he thinks they even disappear people who speak out about it. Like this one time, I made no effort to hide my slack jaw and staring gaze. He didn't care, or at least didn't notice. My hand moved to my pocket for my cigarettes, looking for an opening to take a smoke break before he started talking about the Rothschilds, which exists in this setting. Specific name. It's like up there with like Echo confirming that 9/11 and COVID happened in its universe. You're like, specific names exist too, not just like the countries. I jumped as the door opened, inviting a the burst of icy air. Inviting a busty. I turned to look, seeing a pair of young Caprine women. Caprine? Shuffling through the door. That is one of the names I'm not good at. Let's see. Oh, rapid fire characters, here we come. A third figure, a Lapian guy. Lapping. I'm not good at all the animal names, and even the ones I recognize I'm not used to saying out loud. Lupine and Ursine come out. Ursine? See, I'm not even sure about that one. Those ones come up a lot, obviously, because people have favorites. Followed, making a loud burr as he entered. Thank Christ, some warmth. All three looked familiar in a way I couldn't quite put my finger on, especially the hair guy. I could have sworn I've seen him before. The capering girl with the blue jacket stamped her feet to dislodge the snow in her boots, while the one with the beanie scanned the room before locking eyes with me. I cringed at the unblinking gaze, feeling like she was reading my mind or something. My hand automatically moved to my fringe, pulling my dark hair to ensure it obscured my left eye. Her companion also glanced around before spotting us. She gave a warm grin and happily waved. Just as the three of us arrived at our table, the barista swooped in to place my coffee before me. I gave them a grateful smile as the three new arrivals pulled up chairs to sit up around our table. Hello, guys. Can I get you anything? Oh, a latte would be nice. Tabby? The goat lass in the blue jacket spoke with an American accent. Again, not sure where precisely, but vague enough I can't place it. The younger girl had shoulders hunched and her hands in her pockets. She gave a non-committal shrug. Make that 2 lattes, please. Thank you. Make mine a cappuccino, would ya? There had a clear Irish accent. As he tugged off gloves and rubbed his hands, blowing into them for warmth, the barista moved off to make them their drinks. Let's not make me do Irish and Scottish individually or together as accents. We don't need me to do that. Well, I take it you two are here for the Sylvia. The blue-jacketed girl smiled, leaning forward and hugging herself to warm up. Immediately, the beanie-wearing girl pulled out her phone and focuses on it. Pulls at her... Yeah, we're suddenly talking in present tense, aren't we? Ignoring the rest of us. Yeah, we're here for the Sylvia. I'm Garret Reid. I'm Stephen Golyebev. Pleased to meet you. The Lapen guy sat next to me, drawing close and rubbing his arms for warmth. I'm Aaron Marsh. Pleased to meet you. He gave a grin and a small wave before going back to blowing into his hands. Nice to meet you, fellas. I'm Gale Waters, and this chatty social butterfly is my sister Tabby. Want to introduce yourself? She nudged her sister, who just scowled and muttered, without looking up from her phone. Hi. Me and Steven exchanged a look, but Gale just laughed. She takes time to warm up to people. And it's very cold here. No shit, I thought, judging by the way she was thumbing the screen. She was scrolling something continuously, probably some social media shite like Barker. God, I could be such an old fart sometimes. Hope this Sylvia has decent heating. Forgot to bring ear warmers. That seems like a dangerous mistake in a place like this, although no one's wearing anything. Well, she has a beanie. Arran complained, taking his ears in his hands and rubbing them. What did you expect this far north? Don't you have a hood? Gail chuckles and smirks, though she did rub her own ears a little. Yeah. He pouted. Lapines were really finicky about anything touching or covering their ears. I guess it made sense for people with such sensitive hearing. Wolves like me had sensitive hearing, nowhere near as good as lapines, and even we didn't really like stuff covering our ears when we could help it. That said, leaving ears uncovered out here was a great way to get frostnip. Do you guys know each other? He motioned between Gale and Arran. Oh, no, we met about an hour ago. Decided to stick together since we're all going together anyway. Oh, that's Gale, right. So, what do you guys do? Gale directed at me and Steven. Stefan or Steven? I hate that those are both names, but they can look like the other one. Well, I think when it's just an F, it is just Stefan. I decided to get my introductions in first, before Stefan started talking about the Illuminati. Oh, I'm a Sparky, nothing interesting. What does that mean? When I got a bunch of blank looks and raised eyebrows, I added, electrician. So it was intended that I wouldn't get what he meant, apparently. Oh, right. Is that what you call it where you're from? Just a nickname we use. I'm so used to calling it that, I forget how it must sound. I gave it a small laugh, cringing inwards at the 4 sets of eyes now set on me. Without realizing, I tugged at my fringe, ensuring I covered my eye. That sounds cool. Are you like the guy people call to fix their fuse box? Sometimes, but I mostly work on industrial sites. What happened to your eye? I froze. Tabby had stopped fidgeting with her phone for a moment to gaze me directly in the eye, a look of morbid curiosity on her face. Uh-huh. Did the thing that everyone knows not to do is just immediately call it out. Tabby, you don't just demand people explain stuff like that. I felt my stomach clench, instinctively tugged at my fringe. Had she seen through, or correctly assumed my fringe was hiding my left eye? Judging from Arran and Stefan's reactions, he'd clearly been thinking the same thing. They just evidently had more tact. Why not? I'm just curious. As much as Gale tried, I could see that the others are now staring at me with even more rapt attention. Gale offered a chagrined look. You don't have to explain anything. No, it's fine. It's not as much to say. Oh my god. Had an accident. What the fuck was... Uh-huh. Oh, that's upsetting. Wild CG to have in pocket. Damn. Gale smiled apologetically and gave her sister a, there, satisfied sort of look, although from Tabby's expression she was evidently not satisfied. She mercifully did not press the issue and went back to her phone. So, how about you, Gale? What do you do? I seized the opportunity to move the focus away from me. This poor person is like... He sees things from his perspective, so he doesn't know what he looks like most of the time. It isn't like processing it, but like somebody actively fiddling with their fringe that is a big old bunch of hair that covers their entire side of their face, and them reaching up and touching it constantly is very conspicuous. I say this as somebody who like falls victim to these patterns myself, where it's like it's easy to think nothing of your hand entering the edge of your vision because you barely are seeing anything happening, so it feels like it's a subtle movement. But raising an arm from like a hanging arm all the way down to like pointing your arm straight up at the elbow, up to your shoulder and stuff like that, is a pretty dramatic movement, and it draws attention to whatever you're doing constantly. So if you're constantly touching any element of your head or your face or so on, like that's like so much more noticeable to the outside people than it is to you. So it's never sneaky. Oh, me? I'm not that interesting, to be honest. Just finished my first full year as a registered nurse. Seriously? Bet that's been a stressful time. Oh, it was. But finally getting out of university and being able to work with patients is just so satisfying. Long hours, but I feel like I'm making a difference, you know? What about you, Stefan? Me? He looked more than a little uncomfortable. I, work retail. At a sex shop. Is the level of discomfort implied? Nothing wrong with that? Where do you work? I took a sip of my coffee. While the warmth and scent was inviting, I could never really get on with the taste. I only typically drank it if I needed to wake up. I used to hate coffee in high school and before, but it's a welcome thing every day at this point. Like it is actually, I'm pretty much into most of the flavors at this point. It's funny how that all just shifts over time. I was glad the conversation had turned away from me. I tuned out the conversation a little, glancing from one person to another. That means I can assume I was right, because we won't hear the answer. They seemed nice enough. Even Tabby had stopped fiddling with her phone to observe, though she didn't say anything. With another sip, I turned back to the conversation. What about you, Arran? The hare was about to speak when the barista arrived with a tray carrying their drinks. Oh, thank you kindly. He beamed at the barista, flashing his pearly white teeth. No sooner had his cup been placed before him than he took it up and sipped, eyes closed, with a satisfied, That hit the spot. Oh, I'm a student, studying psychology. He looked a little bashful as he added, and I deliver pizzas in the evenings to make some scratch. Neat. You get to eat lots of pizza then? The word deliver pizzas made Stefan's eyes light up. Well, sometimes. We get pizzas that are canceled or the wrong order, but as much as I like pizza, even I have my limits. Besides, need to watch my figure. He gave me a sharp elbow in the ribs and a wink. I nearly choked on my coffee. What about you, Tabby? Are you in college? Stefan asked between gulps of his coffee. Yep. She said it with a sullen voice, not even looking up. After a few seconds of not elaborating, Stefan, Arran, and myself all exchanged glances while Gale simply gave an embarrassed smile. You could at least try to be friendly. We're going to be traveling together for a while. Tabby, meanwhile, was utterly unmoved by the conversation, slumped down in her chair with her coffee untouched. I'm not here to make friends. I don't even want to be here. You're the one obsessed with finding Mom. Oh. Multiple people trying to find missing people, then it sounds like, and Tabby's disengaged. I'm wondering if the person that was biting us in that vision was the person who died in the introduction, or something else happened there. Just like that, it was as if the freezing air of the outside blew over us. Even Stefan's bouncy energy vanished. Even if I thought she was being a brat, she did remind us of why we were going on this expedition. It wasn't a pleasure cruise. We were going to find the Arran and her crew, or what was left of them. The sound of the door opening again shook us all from our private musings. I wonder what leads to this. Like, there being a search and rescue thing makes sense, but why would it be staffed by family members? Are they all family members of people that went missing? Like, them being the primary staff sounds strange, because if they're doing a search, you'd think that there'd be more government or something, and it'd be like counterproductive to incorporate people related to the missing people that aren't themselves like equipped or trained for this scenario. Which makes me wonder if it's like a privately funded excursion. Like search and rescue already gave up, or no one's looking, and then these people all like found each other as the people whose families went missing, and then collectively pooled funds to like make this trip happen or something, maybe? The sound of the door opening again shook us all from our private musings. Loud, clomping, heavy hooves on wood echoed through the room as a figure swept through the door. We have a horse. With a scarf. And a fringe. A matching fringe, but on the opposite eye, I think? Yeah. Holy moly. Stefan muttered under his breath, eyes wide with alarm. God. Damn. Arran agreed, though his expression was decidedly more pleased. Arran's gay as fuck. The equine who entered was huge, easily pushing 6.5 feet tall. His snappy-looking gear did little to conceal a powerful build. He held himself ramrod straight, moving with casual grace towards us, with each hoof step vibrating through my legs. Good evening. Are you the group waiting to board the Sylvia? His voice was rich and deep as he gazed at us with eyes that felt like they could see right through us. His accent was odd. It was received pronunciation, very cut glass, yet there was an aspect I couldn't place. He sounded posh, that much I could tell. Oh, hello. You must be Sharif. Indeed. Sharif Abdi. Pleased to meet you all. I shall be in charge of the expedition. Would you care for... Arran stammered like he's been approached by his school crush. Coffee? I'm afraid not. I have come to collect you all. The Sylvia is ready to board, and we must not delay. Those piercing eyes settled on the hair. His bashful look quickly changed to an unsettled one under his intense gaze. Without a word, Tabby pushed back from the table with a loud wooden squeak of chair legs on wood and started moving toward the door. Gale blinked, mouth open, as though to call after her, but seemingly decided against it, simply watching her retreating back. Didn't even finish her coffee. I summoned the barista over to settle the bill. He quickly approached, hands clasped before him with a wide, friendly smile. Everything okay? Enjoy your coffees? Yeah, thanks. Stefan recovered from being stunned by Sharif's entrance, and we all started to dig into our pockets for cash. Here you go. With casual ease, Sharif slid a few notes from his coat pocket and handed them to the barista. Keep the change. We all gave him a mix of grateful and surprised looks, but he did not meet our eyes. Simply turned and strode toward the door, where Tabby was waiting, still glued to her phone. Thanks? Sharif did not react. Or Sharif? Opening the door back out into the perished cold, Tabby followed after, not even glancing back. He's, pretty intense. He's pretty stuck up. He just paid for your bill. Chill. He's pretty presumptuous. He's pretty. I was like, I'm waiting for one of them to stop at that word. I'm like, uh-huh. Horny rabbit, got it. It's a bit... I can see it being, reading as like a bit intrusive to come in and pay for somebody else's bill. But otherwise, it's like, it's not stuck up necessarily. And given the context, I'm like, maybe it's him feeling for all these people that have missing family, because this is the person that's staff, so he knows what this run is, but isn't one of the people invested in the same way, maybe? As we gathered up our staff, I feel a twinge in my left eye. I froze for a moment. Please, not now. The twinge could either turn into an annoying ache, with a feeling of sand under my eyelid. That was the most likely outcome. The other was much less pleasant. My left eye clamped shut in response to the pain. What's wrong? Gale sounded concerned, but I glanced around desperately for a restroom. Spotting the signs for the toilet, I gave them a "be right back" and quick walk towards them. I could sense their confusion and alarm, but I didn't care right now. Tears were already starting to stream from my eyes from the pain. Once I was in the bathroom, I fished in my jacket pocket for the bottles I kept on me at all times. Diclofenac and proximethicane eye drops. In this instance, the diclofenac wouldn't be strong or fast-acting enough. My practiced hand identified the correct bottle from touch alone and pulled out the proximethicine. Not metha, proximethicane. Proximethicane. I'm just thinking about the idea of a practiced hand feeling bottles by familiarity, and how, like, that would be... I remember how that was a plot point in Knives Out, but not one I can talk about. Like I've done a million times before, I unscrewed the top and sat it on the rim of the sink, quickly washing my hands. The pain was unimaginable, like an eye full of sand mixed with a red-hot knife through my eyeball. My hands were trembling now, my face aching with the instinctive scrunching of my face to shut my eye and my muzzle wet from the tears. My eyes were in full-blown damage control, flooding themselves to flush out the irritants it believed were there. Taking the bottle, I tilted my eyes back, using my other hand to force my left eye open with great difficulty, and quickly squeezed. Sorry. One drop. Instantly, a cooling, soothing wave of relief banished the worst of the agony. A second drop, and the sandy feeling dissipated. Straight away, my face relaxed as my muscles no longer instinctively tried to keep my eyelids shut. As I hunched over the sink, my breath escaped in one long, heavy sigh. Keeping my eye closed, I allowed the medicine to do its work. I screwed the lid back on the bottle and slipped it back in my pocket. Leaning over the sink, a mix of tears and the drops leaked from my closed eye, running down my nose. Fuck. My face really hurt. That was a really bad one. Normally these attacks tend to come and go more gradually, giving me time to give the diclo drops in, get them in before it becomes excruciating, but every so often I get ones like this. I call them thunderclaps. Like the headache, the ones my brother used to have. So it is brother. My GP had made it clear to me that proxy was for emergency only, that overuse could further damage my eye. But with these thunderclaps, I could be useless for half an hour in unrelenting agony while waiting for the diclo to kick in. Diclo, probably? Yeah, it's more likely to be diclo, given di being two, that being a more useful prefix for these kinds of names. Besides, I was completely blind in my left eye. How much damage could I do? I guess make the pain worse and more frequent? Like it could, that's all I can really think of, yeah. I wonder if it's better to have it surgically removed at that point. With the pain gone, for now, I straightened up. Gazing at my reflection, I regarded my ruined left eye. The milky white cataract was a constant reminder to others of my disfigurement, as if the scar wasn't enough. Garret? You okay in there? There was a gentle tap on the door. He sounded pretty concerned. Remembering the way I dashed off, I must have looked a proper sight. Yeah, sorry. I quickly wiped my face and fixed my facial fluff, the door creaking open, and I saw his worried eyes peeking around the side. You sure? What happened? Seeing I was okay, mostly, he opened the door and stepped inside. Stefan followed closely behind, also looking worried. My eye. I gave a hollow laugh in an attempt to lighten the situation. I get these painful attacks. That was a pretty bad one, even by my standards. I'm okay now, though. I patted my pocket. I have lots of eye drops to keep me going. Hope they don't freeze. Uh-oh. Arran and Stefan exchanged looks before smiling and nodding. As long as you're sure, dude. Stefan brightened, though he still had a sympathetic look. I cringed as both of them were now staring directly at my damaged eye. I tried to laugh it off, turning my head to conceal it in a casual way as I could, tugging my fringe to cover it once again. Seriously, I'm okay. I didn't mean to scare you guys. The pair gave me a searching look, but they finally seemed to relax. Okay, if you're sure. Arran placed a hand on my shoulder. If you're up for it, we should get going then. He and Stefan both stood aside to let me pass, only to face an anxious-looking Gale. Oh, Garret, are you alright? Really, I'm okay. I insisted, giving her what I hoped was a reassuring smile. I noticed she was holding my backpack and gloves. Honestly, it happens. Just something I live with. I didn't mean to scare you. I assured her, gratefully accepting my belongings from her. She gave me a smile and waited for me to put my gloves back on before handing me my pack. I thought you were going to throw up or something. Once my pack was back on, we made our way over to the door. Sharif and Tabby were both waiting and looking pretty pissed. Leave him alone, he's having a bad time. That's probably a good place to cut it for now, about an hour in. Ugh. Very strong start. You get to have it's immediately interesting to recolor the character introductions, because a lot of these stories, these visual novels, the first hour is often just, here's a series of characters to name and put a face to, and that can be tedious if it's not contextualized in some way or delivered through a series of scenes where something's happening. I tried my best to bypass that altogether in my own visual novel and try not to have character introductions and instead have it happen, just hit the ground running, which is its own risk, obviously. In this one's case, we had the cold open with the scare, and then we have the fact that there's the immediate question of who that character is, and then we had this slowly developing thing where we're like, is it the brother of the character we're playing? Ah, his name's Garret. Okay, so we got the name Garret from the intro. That's immediately intriguing. And then we find out, like, even when we're having a normal introduction of everyone being a normal person, that being like not particularly steeped in a scene that's going on that's like tense or dramatic or anything, it's revealed that the reason this conversation is so normal is because everyone's trying to ignore what's happening right now. So that immediately puts a cloud over it all and makes it really interesting that everyone's specifically trying not to talk about the fact that they're all traveling north to potentially find their family's bodies, which is upsetting. And then you had, like, yeah, not just the vague implied some kind of past thing, but like that flash that happens when he says that he had an accident is wild. And then this pain incident also like has this stab of urgency in the middle of the sequence. So it's like a very well handled first hour that keeps things interesting and compelling. Because it's hard, if you think about almost any other form of fiction, you would almost never ask somebody to just sit around for a solid hour and just be introduced to a bunch of characters by their name and faces, and then that's all that's happening. Most tabletop RPGs, you want to have like something going on. You watch like the pilot episode of any TV show, and that first hour is you like establishing the entire premise, probably setting up a status quo and then subverting it in some way and be like, and now this is what they're dealing with. I think about like that incredible first episode of Breaking Bad and how far Walter White goes within a single episode, from normal teacher to cancer diagnosis to Breaking Bad and so on. It's wild to watch that first episode and then remember at the end of that episode that was one episode of a show. Which admittedly is a thing that's somewhat lost in the Netflix binge era, is that shows aren't always written with the assumption they have to get you to come back next week because you can just keep watching right now. So sometimes first episodes don't hook you well enough and aren't as compelling as they used to be, but that was often like the design. And I think that it's if you want people to keep reading your visual novel, it's really good to carefully craft your first hour in a way that front loads what might be interesting about it immediately, because people might not keep reading past the first hour, and they also like, because you can't guarantee they'll finish the first build. But in particular, these kinds of projects are asking people to remember this project exists and come back for the next months or years to read the future builds that aren't even going to be weekly and usually aren't even any kind of reliable schedule. So that hook's really important, and this one does a pretty good job. So if you want to check this one out, there's a link in the description to the full game so far. I realized I said full game, and I'm like, I don't think it's done. I think there's 3 chapters so far, I think is what I might have glanced at. But that's going to be it for this week, guys. I'll see you next time.